Hello everyone! This is Remlays from 40k Theories, and welcome to the October 2023 edition of the Patreon Q&A sessions. As always, if you would like your questions answered, then click the link in the video description below and help support the channel by becoming a patron. Now, let's jump into the questions. Voice of the Emperor asks, do you do book reviews for non-Warhammer books? I ask because I wrote a book myself that's modern military fantasy. We don't, I'm afraid. At most, we'll probably push to something like maybe Dark Future, which is still a Games Workshop property, but generally we won't deviate beyond Warhammer-related topics. But in all seriousness, no, congratulations on getting a book published, that's really cool, seriously. Pentadeus asks, would there be any major differences if Guilliman and Angron had their homeworlds switched? This depends entirely upon whether the nature of the Primarchs was nature or nurture, because there's evidence to support both cases, to be honest. If it was nature, then I can't imagine there being too much of a major difference from their own natural personalities, but at the very least, if Angron was on Macragge rather than Nuceria, then he wouldn't have had the butcher's nails, which means he would have been a far less angry boy, shall we say. How does a Nova Cannon work? To my knowledge, it's very similar to the way a railgun works, but instead of using magnets, it's using like a gravimetric field to basically launch a projectile at the speed of light. Though how, a cannon shell survives being launched at the speed of light to actually, travel before impacting, I don't have a clue. Science in 40k is just a mess. Science is where, in 40k is where science goes to be drowned, let's be honest. Brent Feast asks, do Guilliman and/or Call know about the Grey Knights? Yes, they fought alongside them during the Terran Crusade. Given that Perturabo pretty much carried the traitor legions to the brink of victory, with the more chaos-corrupted Primarchs appearing to hinder his efforts as often as they helped, do you think the heresy would have gone better for the traitors if Perturabo was the only traitor Primarch? If Perturabo was the only traitor Primarch, then he would have about 17 other legions kicking the shit out of him. So probably not. If Chapter Master Varric ever hears the previous question, how long do you think it would take his resulting rage to corrupt him into a champion of Khorne? I don't know, 15 minutes? I genuinely don't know. Griffin of Might asks, did a Custodes still use armory thralls, and if so, where are they recruited from? I'm not entirely sure, to be honest, but if I had to guess, I imagine it would be those firstborn sons of the Terran nobility that, for whatever reason, were unable to become Custodes. Similar to how a chapter serf or Space Marines, for example, are generally recruited from those aspirants who fail their trials, or for whatever reason, reject the gene seed implantation process, so I imagine it'd be something similar. What are some of your favourite non-Warhammer books that you've read? I'll be honest, it's been a long time since I've read some, non-Warhammer related works, but one off the top of my head that I do recommend is the Quintaglio Ascension trilogy, because it's about dinosaurs in space and it's awesome. The first book is about, Galileo if he was a T-Rex. The second book is about Charles Darwin if he was a T-Rex, kind of thing. And it's great. And, I do recommend them. If you like, sci-fi fantasy and that kind of thing, I do recommend you pick them up. I think you can get them on Amazon, like an ebook and audiobook, if I recall correctly. I'll need to double check though, but yeah. Justin Jeffries asks, what are your thoughts on taking a Marine destined for a Dreadnought and hardwiring him into a Titan? On paper, I could see why people would think that's a good idea, considering that some Titan Princeps have been shown to be placed in an amniotic cocoon which is hardwired into their Dreadnought. There's an instance of that shown in Titan Death, but I don't think it would be very practical considering that a Titan requires an entire crew to operate. While the Princeps is, the brain of the Titan, you require, operatives to operate things like the limbs and maintain the reactor and that kind of thing. And that's not even taking into account the fact that a Titan's machine spirit is a hell of a lot more powerful than a dreadnought. You know, placing a Space Marine into a dreadnought is like putting someone on a bicycle. You know, here's the bike, go ride it. Putting someone in a Titan is like putting them on a horse, a wild horse. You gotta break them in, you gotta bend them to your will, essentially, and there's a lot more effort and work involved. So, in my personal opinion, I don't think it's a very practical idea. But I can see why people would think, you know, it could be possible. I can see the appeal. And finally, Zero Hits asks, in a scenario where Trays in the Infinite actually trades away the perfect clone of Fulgrim to Guilliman, what do you think Guilliman would do with him? That's an interesting idea. I mean, he could potentially use Clone Grims as like, you know, a surrogate to like vent to us, like, why couldn't you have like stayed good or whatever? I don't know. It's hard to put into words, but like, as a symbolic like way for Guilliman to express his grief to his brother without, you know, fear of being killed again. But then again, he could do something as like, again, a symbolic gesture, as like, Fulgrim turned against the Imperium, so we're going to do a symbolic gesture with his clone where he, I don't know, where we execute him for his, you know, real version's crimes or something stupid like that. I don't know. It's a question that has no simple answer, and I think that there will be a lot of potential outcomes for it. But I don't know. This seems like something that needs a lot more explanation or exploration rather than what I can do in one of these QA videos. Sorry, but I hope at least I, you know, managed to spur some ideas, if nothing else. And that concludes this edition of the Patreon Q&A sessions. As always, if you would like your questions answered, then click the link in the video description below and help support the channel by becoming a patron. Until next time, this has been Remlays from 40k Theories, and we'll see you again soon. Bye bye!